When my husband cried at our anniversary dinner, I thought it was the most romantic moment of our 25 years together. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar weight of his wedding band against my palm. His tears caught the candlelight, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a man who could still be moved to emotion after all these years. I had no idea those tears were guilt. It was a Friday evening in late September, the kind of night where the air smells like wood smoke and the leaves are just starting to turn. We were at Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where he proposed to me 26 years ago. The same corner booth, the same waiter, now gray-haired like us. The same warmth that made you feel like you were stepping into someone's home rather than a restaurant. Marcus had been quiet during the appetizers, pushing his bruschetta around the plate. I chalked it up to work stress. He ran a consulting firm downtown, and the past year had been demanding. But when our entrees arrived and he still hadn't touched his food, I noticed his hands were shaking. "Marcus?" I said softly. "Are you okay?" He looked up at me, and that's when I saw them. Tears pooling in his dark brown eyes, threatening to spill over. In 25 years of marriage, I'd seen him cry exactly 3 times. When his mother died, when our daughter was born, and when our son graduated from medical school. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I just love you so much, Diane. You've been everything to me." My heart swelled. I felt my own eyes getting misty. "I love you too, sweetheart." He wiped his face with his napkin, gave me a watery smile, and we finished our dinner in comfortable silence, or what I thought was comfortable. Looking back now, I can see it was the silence of a man drowning in his own lies. We drove home in his Mercedes, the one he'd bought himself as a 55th birthday present earlier that year. The leather seats still smelled new. He held my hand the entire drive, his thumb tracing circles on my palm like he used to do when we were dating. When we pulled into our driveway, he kissed me, deeply, desperately, before we went inside. That night, we made love with an intensity that surprised me. Afterward, as he fell asleep with his arm draped across my waist, I lay awake in the darkness, feeling grateful. Grateful for this man, this life, this love that had weathered every storm. I had no idea that storm was already inside our house. My name is Diane Catherine Holloway, and for 25 years, I believed I knew exactly who I was. Marcus Holloway's wife, mother to 2 incredible children, and partner in a life we'd built brick by brick since we were both 23 years old. We met in 1997 at a mutual friend's barbecue. I was fresh out of college, working my first job as an elementary school teacher. Marcus was a year into his MBA program, full of ambition and charm. He had this way of listening, really listening, that made you feel like the most important person in the room. When he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. Our courtship was old-fashioned and sweet. Dinner dates, long walks, handwritten notes left on my windshield. He proposed on a Tuesday evening at Marcello's, getting down on one knee right there in that corner booth while the entire restaurant applauded. I said yes before he even finished asking. We married in June of 1999. Our daughter, Alicia, was born 3 years later, and our son, Christopher, arrived 2 years after that. We bought our house in Oak Ridge, a 4-bedroom colonial with a backyard big enough for swing sets and summer barbecues. I taught second grade at Riverside Elementary. Marcus climbed the corporate ladder, eventually starting his own consulting firm when Christopher was in middle school. Life was good, not perfect. No life is, but good. We had our routines. Coffee together every morning before he left for work. Family dinners whenever possible. Date nights twice a month. Sunday mornings at St. Andrew's Episcopal, followed by brunch at the diner on 5th Street. Marcus traveled for work, sometimes for days at a time. Chicago, Boston, Atlanta. It was part of the job, and I never questioned it. He always calls me before bed, no matter what time zone he was in. He always brought back little gifts, a snow globe from Chicago, maple candies from Vermont, a silk scarf from a boutique in Savannah. I trusted him completely. Our children were our pride. Alicia graduated from Princeton and now worked as an attorney in Manhattan. Christopher was in his residency at Johns Hopkins, following in his dream of becoming a cardiac surgeon. When people asked me about my greatest accomplishment, I pointed to them. But if someone had asked Marcus that question in the months leading up to our anniversary, I wonder now what he would have said. Would he have lied? Or would he have told the truth, that his greatest accomplishment was keeping two lives spinning at once, never letting them collide? The unraveling began with a phone call I wasn't supposed to answer. It was 3 days after our anniversary, a Monday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Marcus's phone started buzzing on the counter. He was upstairs in the shower, and normally I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But something made me glance at the screen. The name that flashed across it was T. Richardson, client. I picked up the phone without thinking. Hello? There was a pause. Then a woman's voice, soft and surprised. Marcus? No, this is his wife. Can I help you? Another pause, longer this time. Oh, I must have the wrong number. You called Marcus Holloway's phone, I said, feeling that first prickle of something wrong. Is this about a business matter? Yes, she said quickly, too quickly. Sorry to bother you. She hung up. I stood there holding his phone, staring at the name. T. Richardson, client. Something about that call felt off, the way she'd sounded when I identified myself. Not businesslike, but caught, startled, almost afraid. When Marcus came downstairs 10 minutes later, hair damp and smelling like his sandalwood soap, I mentioned it casually. Someone named T. Richardson called your phone. A client? He didn't miss a beat. Oh yeah, Teresa Richardson. New client out of the Philadelphia office. What did she need? She hung up when I told her I was your wife. He poured himself coffee, his back to me. Probably got nervous. Some people are weird about calling after hours. It made sense. It should have made sense, but that little seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next 2 weeks, I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. Small things, tiny cracks in the facade of our perfect life. Marcus had always been meticulous about his appearance. That was part of being a successful consultant, he'd say. But lately, he'd been even more particular. New cologne. Shirts I didn't remember buying. He'd started going to a different barber, one in the city rather than our local shop where he'd gone for 15 years. Change is good, he said when I mentioned it. Pete retired. This new guy does a better cut. His phone was always face down now. He'd started taking it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom, even into the backyard when he was taking out the trash. When it buzzed at dinner, he'd glance at it quickly, then silence it without looking at the message. "Work can wait," he'd say with a smile, reaching for my hand. But work hadn't been able to wait before. Work had been his excuse for checking his phone constantly, for answering emails at midnight, for taking calls during our date nights. The biggest change was the sex. After 25 years of marriage, our intimate life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, satisfying but predictable. Suddenly, Marcus was different, more passionate, more experimental, more attentive to details he'd never seemed to care about before. I remember lying in bed one night after he'd fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling and thinking, should I be grateful or worried? I chose grateful. I wanted to choose grateful. But the doubt was growing. The truth came to me on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-October, wrapped in dry cleaning plastic. Marcus had dropped off his suits at the cleaners on Saturday and asked me to pick them up on my way home from work. I'd forgotten until Tuesday, so I swung by during my planning period, grabbed the 4 plastic-wrapped suits, and tossed them in my trunk. When I got home, I carried them upstairs and laid them across our bed to remove the plastic. That's when something fell out of the inside pocket of his navy blue suit, the one he'd worn to our anniversary dinner. A small, black velvet box. My heart started pounding before I even opened it, because I recognized that box. I'd seen one just like it 26 years ago when Marcus proposed. It was from Brennan Jewelers, the high-end shop downtown where you went for special occasions, where you went when you wanted something to mean forever. I sat down on the edge of the bed and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a ring. Not just any ring. A platinum band with channel-set diamonds wrapping all the way around. Elegant, expensive. The kind of ring you give someone you love. But it wasn't for me. I wore my wedding rings every single day. The simple gold band Marcus had slipped on my finger in 1999, and the small diamond anniversary band he'd given me on our 10th year. They were on my hand right now, familiar and comfortable as my own skin. This ring in my lap was a stranger. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe it was for Alicia, an early Christmas gift? But Alicia didn't wear yellow gold. She preferred rose gold, and besides, this was sized for a much smaller finger than hers. Maybe it was for his secretary, Margaret, who was retiring next month after 30 years. But Margaret wore statement jewelry, big and bold, not delicate rings like this. Maybe... Stop, I told myself. Stop making excuses. I knew what this was, deep in my gut, below all the rationalizations and desperate hopes. I knew. I put the ring back in its box and slipped it into my nightstand drawer. Then I went downstairs, poured myself a glass of wine, even though it was only 3 in the afternoon, and sat at the kitchen table trying to decide what to do next. Confront him? He'd have an explanation. Marcus always had explanations. Ignore it? Pretend I never found it? Hope it was some terrible misunderstanding? Or investigate? The word felt foreign in my mouth. Investigate. Like I was some detective in a crime drama instead of a 50-year-old school teacher sitting in her own kitchen, trying not to fall apart. But that's what I decided to do. I started small, telling myself I was probably wrong, that there would be a perfectly innocent explanation and we'd laugh about this someday. Remember that time you thought I was cheating because of a ring I'd bought for my sister? Marcus didn't have a sister. That night at dinner, I was normal, or what I hoped looked like normal. I asked about his day, talked about my students, mentioned that I'd picked up his suits from the cleaners. I watched his face for any flicker of panic, any awareness that I might have found what was hidden in his pocket. Nothing. He was perfectly calm, perfectly loving. He even suggested we watch our favorite show together after dinner. The next morning, after he left for work, I did something I'd never done in 25 years of marriage. I went through his things. I started with his home office, a converted bedroom at the end of the hall where he handled paperwork and took evening calls. His desk was neat, organized with the same precision he brought to everything. Folders labeled by client name, his laptop password protected, a stack of business cards in a holder. I checked the trash can. Empty, except for a crumpled sticky note with times for a conference call. His file cabinet was locked. I stood there staring at that locked cabinet for a long moment. In all the years we'd lived in this house, I'd never known Marcus to lock anything. We didn't keep secrets from each other. Or so I'd thought. I went to our bedroom and checked his dresser, the top drawer where he kept his wallet and watch when he got home from work. Everything looked normal. Credit cards in their slots, receipts from gas stations and lunch spots, a photo of me and the kids tucked into the billfold. His closet was next. I went through suit pockets systematically, finding nothing but lint and forgotten business cards. His shoes were lined up perfectly on their rack, his ties organized by color. Then I saw it. On the top shelf, pushed back behind a stack of sweaters he never wore, was a shoebox. Not a shoebox for shoes, one of those decorative ones with a lid, the kind people use to store photos or letters. I pulled it down and opened it. Inside were receipts, dozens of them. Restaurants I'd never heard of, all in cities where Marcus traveled for work. Boston, Philadelphia, Charlotte. But these weren't the kind of receipts you save for expense reports. These were dinner receipts, wine, dessert, the kind of meal you share with someone special. There were hotel receipts too, but not the usual business hotels Marcus stayed at. Holiday Inns and Hampton Inns with corporate rates. These were boutique hotels, places with names like the Windsor House and the Riverside Inn, places with room service charges for champagne and late-night snacks. And then I found the photos. They were printed on regular paper, clearly screenshots from his phone that he'd printed at some point. Nothing explicit or pornographic, just intimate. Marcus at a restaurant table, smiling at whoever was taking the photo. Marcus on a hiking trail I didn't recognize, his arm around empty space. She must have been cropped out. Marcus in a hotel room doorway, looking happy in a way I recognized but couldn't place until I realized that was how he used to look at me when we were first dating. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the box. Receipts scattered across the closet floor. I sat down right there among his shoes and cried. Not loud, hysterical sobs. I couldn't manage those. Just quiet tears that wouldn't stop coming. 25 years. 25 years of marriage, of building a life together, of trust and partnership and love. Or what I thought was love. How long had this been going on? I gathered up the receipts with numb fingers, putting them back in the box exactly as I'd found them. I returned the box to its hiding place behind the sweaters. I wiped my face and went downstairs to finish my coffee like none of it had happened. But everything had happened. Everything had changed. I didn't confront Marcus that night, or the next. I needed more than receipts and a hidden ring. I needed proof, undeniable, concrete proof, before I destroyed our marriage with accusations he could explain away. So, I became someone I never thought I'd be, a woman spying on her own husband. I started tracking his patterns. Marcus had always been a creature of habit, and those habits were my roadmap. He had a business trip to Philadelphia scheduled for the following week. 3 days, he'd said. Wednesday through Friday. Some big client presentation. "Do you want me to pack for you?" I asked on Tuesday evening, the way I'd done hundreds of times before. "No, that's okay. I'll do it tomorrow night." He kissed my forehead. "You've got enough to worry about with parent-teacher conferences." But Wednesday morning, when I checked the suitcase he'd packed, I noticed things that didn't add up. His good cologne, the expensive one he only wore for special occasions. The cashmere sweater I'd given him last Christmas, still with its tags on, that he claimed he was saving for the right time. 2 button-down shirts that were brand new, still crisp from the store. You don't pack your best clothes for a business presentation. You pack them for someone you want to impress. After he left for the airport, I sat down at my laptop and did something else I'd never done. I checked our credit card statements. Not just glanced at them when they came in the mail to make sure the balance looked right, but actually studied them line by line. And there it was, a pattern emerging like a photograph developing in a dark room. Charges to restaurants I'd never heard of, always in cities where Marcus was supposedly on business. Florists, a jewelry store in Philadelphia, one charge for $347 back in August, another for $892 in September. The September charge was dated 2 weeks before our anniversary, right around when he would have bought that ring. I cross-referenced the charges with his work calendar, which he kept synced to our family calendar on the fridge. Every suspicious restaurant charge lined up with a business trip. Every florist purchase happened during a supposed conference or client meeting. But it was the hotel charges that sealed it. Marcus always booked his own hotels, said it was easier than going through the company travel department. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? But looking at the statements now, I saw he wasn't staying at the usual business hotels. He was staying at places with room rates of $250 to $400 a night, places that charged for couples massage services and champagne turn down. I printed out 6 months of credit card statements and highlighted every suspicious charge in yellow. When I was done, the pages looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Yellow marks everywhere, a pattern I'd been too trusting to see. The affair had been going on for at least 6 months, maybe longer. On Thursday evening, while Marcus was still in Philadelphia, I finally called the number I'd been staring at for days, the one that had been in his phone when T. Richardson called. I'd found it easily enough once I knew where to look. Marcus kept a backup of his phone on his laptop, and his laptop password was the same one we'd used for years, our wedding date, followed by our initials. He'd never imagined I'd have a reason to look. My finger hovered over the call button for a full minute before I pressed it. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. 1 ring, 2, 3. "Hello?" A woman's voice, young-sounding, cautious. "Is this Teresa Richardson?" I tried to keep my voice steady. A long pause. "Who is this?" "My name is Diane Holloway. I believe you know my husband Marcus." The silence that followed was so complete I thought she might have hung up. Then I heard her breathing, quick, shallow breaths like someone trying not to panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said. "I found the ring," I said quietly. "The platinum one with the diamonds all the way around. It's beautiful. When were you going to tell him yes?" The breathing stopped entirely. Then, "Mrs. Holloway, How long?" I interrupted. My voice was still calm, but inside I was screaming. "How long has this been going on? I shouldn't." She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. "Please," I said. "I need to know the truth, all of it. He's been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I can't." My voice cracked. "I just need to know." More silence. Then, in a whisper so soft I almost couldn't hear it, 9 months. 9 months, 3/4 of a year, while I'd been teaching second graders to read, while I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, while I'd been lying next to him every night thinking we were happy. All of it had been a lie. "Are you in love with him?" I asked. "Yes." She was crying openly now. "I'm so sorry. I never meant. I didn't know he was married at first. He told me he was divorced. By the time I found out the truth, I was already..." She broke off, sobbing. "Already what?" "Already in love with him. And he said he was going to leave you. He said he was just waiting for the right time, after your anniversary. He said he didn't want to ruin the anniversary you'd been planning for months." I actually laughed. It came out bitter and strange. "How considerate of him. Mrs. Holloway, I'm so sorry. If I'd known from the beginning..." "You would have done what? Said no?" I didn't wait for her to answer. "How old are you, Teresa?" 29. 29. Young enough to be our daughter? Young enough to still believe in fairy tales about married men leaving their wives. "He's not going to leave me," I said. "He never was. Men like Marcus don't leave their wives. They just have their cake and eat it too." "But," he said. "I don't care what he said. I'm telling you what's true." I took a breath, steadied myself. "Is he with you right now?" "No, he's at a client dinner. He'll be back at the hotel around 10. "At the hotel! Their hotel!" "While I sat in our house, in our bedroom, wearing the wedding rings he'd given me 25 years ago." "Thank you for being honest with me," I said. "I know that wasn't easy." "What are you going to do?" she whispered. "I haven't decided yet. But whatever I do, you won't be part of it. End it with him, Teresa. You're young. You deserve someone who's actually free to love you." I hung up before she could respond. Then I sat on our bed, my bed, not ours anymore, and let myself fall apart. Fully this time. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and primal. The kind that shakes your whole body and leaves you gasping for air. When I was empty, wrung out like a rag, I went to the bathroom and washed my face. Looked at myself in the mirror. At 50 years old, I still looked like myself. A little more gray in my hair, a few more lines around my eyes, but still Diane. Still the woman who'd stood at the altar 25 years ago and promised forever. But Marcus had broken forever. And now I had to decide what came next. Marcus came home from Philadelphia on Friday afternoon, all smiles and kisses. He brought me flowers, a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, and told me about the successful client presentation. They loved it, he said, setting his suitcase by the stairs. We're probably looking at a 6-figure contract. That's wonderful, I said. My voice sounded normal. I'd practiced it in the mirror all morning. That evening, I made his favorite dinner. Pot roast with roasted vegetables, homemade biscuits, apple pie for dessert. He ate with gusto, complimenting every bite, telling me I was too good to him. I'm a lucky man, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I looked at his hand covering mine, at his wedding ring, and I wondered if he wore it when he was with her, or if he slipped it off and pretended to be someone else entirely. After dinner, after we'd done the dishes together, and he'd poured us both a brandy, I said, Marcus, we need to talk. Something in my tone must have warned him. He set down his glass and looked at me carefully. What's wrong? I found the ring. He blinked. What ring? The platinum one, with the diamonds. The one you bought for Teresa Richardson. I watched the color drain from his face. Watched him open his mouth, close it, open it again. Watched 25 years of trust shatter in his eyes as he realized he'd been caught. Diane, don't. I held up my hand. Don't lie to me anymore. I know everything. I've seen the receipts, the credit card statements, the photos you hid in the closet. I spoke to her on the phone. I know it's been 9 months. I know you told her you were going to leave me after our anniversary. I know about the boutique hotels and the couple's massages and the champagne. He sank into his chair like someone had cut his strings. Diane, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been cheating on me for 9 months? That you cried at our anniversary dinner, not because you loved me, but because you felt guilty? That you've been lying to my face every single day while you played house with a woman young enough to be our daughter? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Marcus? Help me understand. Help me understand how the man I've loved for 25 years could do this to me. He put his head in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears on his cheeks. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. It started so innocently. Just a work colleague. Someone to have dinner with when I was traveling. I was lonely. The business was stressful. And she was there, and she listened, and it just happened. It didn't just happen. You made choices. You chose to have dinner with her. You chose to book romantic hotels. You chose to buy her jewelry. You chose to lie to me every single day. I was going to end it, he said desperately. I swear to God, Diane, I was going to end it. I love you. I've always loved you. She was just what? Just a midlife crisis? Just something to make you feel young again? Just a mistake? Yes, all of that. It was stupid and selfish and wrong, and I'm so sorry. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Sorry doesn't fix this, Marcus. Sorry doesn't undo 9 months of betrayal. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust I had in you. Please. He reached for me, and I stepped back. The look on his face, like I'd physically struck him, would have broken my heart a week ago. Now, it just made me angry. Don't touch me, I said quietly. Don't you dare touch me. What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. Just please don't give up on us. Us? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. There is no us anymore, Marcus. You destroyed us when you decided she was worth more than 25 years of marriage. That's not true. You're everything to me. If I was everything to you, you wouldn't have spent 9 months fucking someone else. The word hung in the air between us. I never cursed. In 25 years of marriage, Marcus had maybe heard me say damn 3 times. But this moment deserved the harsh edge of profanity. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I want you to leave, I said. Pack a bag and get out of this house. Diane, please, leave, now, before I call Alicia and Christopher and tell them what their father has been doing while he's supposed to be building his career. That stopped him. The thought of our children knowing, the thought of their respect, their love, being tainted by his choices. You wouldn't, he whispered. Try me. He stood slowly, like an old man, like someone who'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Can I at least? No. Whatever you were going to ask, the answer is no. Just go. He went upstairs. I heard him moving around in our bedroom, heard the zipper of a suitcase, heard his footsteps coming back down. He stopped in the doorway of the kitchen where I still stood, frozen in place. I love you, he said. I know you don't believe me right now, but I do. I've never stopped loving you. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this, I said. If this is your love, I don't want it anymore. He left without another word. I heard the front door close, heard his car start in the driveway, heard him drive away. And then I was alone in our house, my house now, with nothing but the silence and the ruins of everything I'd believed in. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in our bed, my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage and wondering which parts had been real and which parts had been performance. Had he ever really loved me? Or had I just been convenient? The reliable wife at home while he played his games on the road. At 3 a.m, I got up and went to his office. I opened his laptop with the password he'd never changed and started digging. If I was going to destroy my marriage, I was going to do it with my eyes wide open. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. There were emails, hundreds of them. Sweet, romantic messages that read like love letters. Photos she'd sent him. Nothing pornographic, just selfies and pictures of her day. But the captions were intimate. Missing you and can't wait until next week, and I love you more every day. And his responses were just as bad, maybe worse, because these were words I recognized, phrases he'd used with me. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I can't imagine my life without you. You make everything better. He'd recycled our love story for someone else. I found calendar entries for their meetings, color-coded differently from his actual business trips. I found receipts for gifts he'd given her. Jewelry, flowers, a cashmere scarf, perfume. I found hotel confirmation numbers and restaurant reservations. And I found something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Bank statements for an account I didn't know existed. A separate account, in his name only, where he'd been funneling money for months. $20,000. Money that should have been ours. Money from his business, from our joint accounts, from the life we'd built together. He'd been planning to leave, not just having an affair, actually planning an exit strategy. I printed everything, every email, every receipt, every bank statement. I put it all in a folder and locked it in my own desk drawer. Then I called the one person I knew could help me. Mom? Alicia's sleepy voice came through the phone. It's 4 a.m. What's wrong? Your father is having an affair. Silence. Then, what? I told her everything about the ring, the phone call, the confrontation. I heard her crying on the other end of the line. Heard her boyfriend, a good man, an honest man, murmuring comfort in the background. I'm coming home, she said when I finished. You don't have to. Mom, I'm coming home. I'll be there by tomorrow night. Next, I called Christopher. He was in the middle of a shift at the hospital, but he called me back during his break. Dad did what? His voice went from concerned to furious in the span of a sentence. That son of a... Mom, are you okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. I'm going to kill him. You're not. You're going to let me handle this my way. Which is what? I don't know yet, but it's going to be with dignity. No matter what he's done, I'm not going to sink to his level. By Saturday evening, both of my children were home. Alicia walked through the door and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Christopher was right behind her, his face set in that determined expression that reminded me so much of his father. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd shared thousands of meals with Marcus, and I showed them everything I'd found. Watched their faces as they read through their father's betrayal. We support you, no matter what you decide, Alicia said, gripping my hand. Divorce him. Take him for everything he's worth. He doesn't deserve you. Or forgive him, Christopher added, though his voice suggested he didn't really believe that was an option. Whatever you need, Mom. We're here. I looked at my children, grown now, accomplished, strong, and felt a surge of pride. They had turned out so well despite their father's flaws. Maybe because of my love. Maybe because some things were stronger than lies. I need to figure out what I want, I said. Not what's fair, not what's right, not what other people think I should do. I need to figure out what Diane Holloway wants for the rest of her life. Marcus called 73 times that first week. I know because I counted. He texted constantly. Long messages begging for forgiveness, explaining that it meant nothing, promising he'd ended it with Teresa, swearing he'd do anything to make it right. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I hired a lawyer. Not a bulldog, not someone who would take him for every penny. Just a good, solid attorney who specialized in divorce cases. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she was 53, divorced herself, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. What do you want out of this? She asked at our first meeting. I want to be free, I said. And I want what's fair, not revenge, just fair. She nodded. I can work with that. The legal process was surprisingly simple once you broke through the emotional complexity. We'd been married for 25 years in a community property state. Everything we owned was half mine by law. The house, the savings, his business, his pension. He had a separate account, I told Patricia, showing her the bank statements. $20,000 that he hid from me. She smiled grimly. That's going to work in your favor. Financial infidelity. The judge won't like that. Marcus tried to fight it at first. He wanted to negotiate, wanted to talk directly to me, wanted to explain. His lawyer called Patricia repeatedly, suggesting mediation, suggesting counseling, suggesting we slow down and think about what we were doing. "Tell his lawyer I've thought about nothing else," I said. And my answer is no. What broke him was Thanksgiving. I spent it with Alicia and Christopher, just the three of us. We cooked together, laughed together, and when we said grace, I actually felt grateful. Grateful for my children, grateful for my strength, grateful that I'd found out the truth before wasting another 25 years on a lie. Marcus spent it alone in the apartment he'd rented downtown. He sent me a text at midnight. "I miss my family. I miss you. I'm so sorry." I deleted it without responding. By December, he'd stopped fighting. He signed the divorce papers without protest. The house was mine. Half the savings were mine. Half the value of his business would be paid out over time. The $20,000 from his secret account came back to me with interest. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked before we filed the final paperwork. "Once this is done, it's done. You can't go back." I thought about it, really thought about it, about 25 years of marriage, about the good times we'd had, the family we'd built, the life we'd shared, about the man I'd loved who'd turned out to be someone else entirely. "I'm sure," I said. The divorce was finalized on January 15th, 2024. I became Diane Catherine Holloway again, no longer Marcus's wife, just myself, a 50-year-old woman starting over. They say healing isn't linear. That's something I repeated to myself constantly in those first few months. Because some days I was fine, strong, independent, grateful for my freedom. And some days I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't stop crying, couldn't understand how something I'd believed in so completely had turned out to be so fragile. I went to therapy. A nice woman named Dr. Sarah Morrison, who had kind eyes and didn't try to push me toward forgiveness or bitterness, just helped me process everything I was feeling. "You're grieving," she said during one session. "Not just the marriage, but the future you thought you had. The man you thought you knew, the trust you thought was unbreakable. That's all worth grieving." She was right. I was grieving. Some days it felt like someone had died. In a way, someone had. The Marcus I thought I knew, the life I thought we had. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I started with watercolors, terrible, muddy things that looked like a child had made them. But slowly, I got better. I took classes at the community center, met other women who were also starting over, also rebuilding their lives from the ground up. One of them, a woman named Carol, who'd divorced her husband 5 years earlier after he cleaned out their bank account and ran off with his secretary, became a good friend. "It gets easier," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Not better exactly, the scar is always there, but it stops hurting every time you breathe." She was right about that too. I heard through Alicia that Marcus and Teresa had broken up within weeks of my filing for divorce. Apparently, reality wasn't as romantic as their affair had been. When Teresa realized he was actually going to leave his wife for her, realized what that meant in terms of legal fees and divided assets and children who hated her, she'd backed out. She told Dad she couldn't be with someone who'd throw away his family, Alicia reported. The irony was apparently lost on both of them. Marcus tried to reconcile. He showed up at my house in March, looking like he'd aged 10 years, thinner, gray in places he hadn't been before, tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. "Can we talk?" he asked when I answered the door. No, I said. Please, just 5 minutes. I need you to know. I don't care what you need me to know, Marcus. We're divorced. We're done. There's nothing left to say. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. And I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost your comfortable life. You're not sorry you hurt me. Because if you were, you never would have done it in the first place. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, because he knew I was right. I do miss you, he said quietly, for what it's worth. It's not worth anything, I said. Goodbye, Marcus. I closed the door and didn't look back. By the time spring arrived, I'd settled into a new rhythm, a new normal that didn't include Marcus. I still taught second grade at Riverside Elementary, still had coffee every morning, though now I drank it alone on my back porch, watching the birds and enjoying the silence. Still went to St. Andrew's on Sundays, though I sat in a different pew now, away from the spot where we'd always sat as a family. Some people whispered, small town gossip being what it is. Everyone knew about the divorce, about the affair. Some people looked at me with pity, others with curiosity, a few with judgment, as if I must have done something to drive him away. I learned not to care. Alicia visited once a month, bringing her boyfriend and plans for their future. They got engaged in May, and when she asked me to help plan the wedding, I said yes with genuine joy, because this was real. This was the kind of love that didn't hide in hotel rooms and fake business trips. Christopher called every Sunday just to check in. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. He told me about his patients. No names, just stories. And I told him about my students. We didn't talk about Marcus unless Christopher brought it up, and even then, it was brief. Do you hate him? Christopher asked once. I thought about it. No, I pity him. He threw away something real for something that was never going to last. That's sad, not hateful. You're a better person than I am, Mom. No, I'm just tired of being angry. And I was. Tired of the anger, the bitterness, the constant loop of why and how and what if. I wanted to move forward, not stay mired in the past. I dated a little, nothing serious. A nice man from church took me to dinner a few times. A colleague from school invited me to a concert. I went because it felt good to be wanted, but I wasn't ready for anything serious. Maybe I wouldn't be for a long time. Maybe never. And that was okay. I learned to be alone without being lonely, to enjoy my own company, my own space, my own choices. I redecorated the bedroom, replacing the heavy furniture Marcus had chosen with lighter pieces that felt more like me. I planted a garden in the backyard. Flowers mostly, but also tomatoes and herbs. I joined a book club. I became Diane again. Not Marcus's wife, not someone's ex. Just Diane. I kept the ring, the platinum one with the diamonds, the one he'd meant for Teresa. I know I should have thrown it away, or sold it, or given it to Alicia, but I kept it in my nightstand drawer, right next to my own wedding rings, which I'd taken off the day the divorce was finalized. Sometimes I'd take it out and look at it, think about what it represented. A promise that was never going to be kept. A future that was never going to happen. A lie wrapped in precious metal. One day in late summer, almost a year after I'd found it, I drove to the beach. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the beach was nearly empty. Just a few families with young children, a couple of surfers in the distance. I walked out to the water's edge, the ring in my hand. I thought about throwing it into the ocean, watching it disappear into the waves, letting it be buried in sand and salt and time. A dramatic ending to a dramatic chapter. But that felt like giving it too much power, like it still mattered. Instead, I went to a pawn shop on the way home, a nondescript place on a busy street. The man behind the counter was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a slight Eastern European accent. "What can I do for you?" I put the ring on the counter. "How much will you give me for this?" He examined it carefully, checking the hallmark, holding it up to the light. "It's very nice. Platinum, high-quality diamonds. I can give you $2,000. It had probably cost Marcus twice that, maybe more. But I didn't care about getting fair market value. I just wanted it gone. "Deal," I said. He counted out the money in 20s, and I took it without counting it myself. I walked out of that pawn shop lighter than I'd been in a year. I used the money to book a trip to Italy, something I'd always wanted to do but had never prioritized. Marcus had always said he was too busy, always found reasons to postpone. I went alone that October, spent 2 weeks wandering through Florence and Rome and Venice, eating pasta and gelato, visiting museums and churches, sitting in cafes, and watching the world go by. On my last day in Rome, I threw a coin in the Trevi Fountain. The tradition says, if you throw a coin, you'll return to Rome. But when I threw mine, I wasn't wishing to come back. I was wishing to keep moving forward. I saw Marcus one last time, almost 2 years after our divorce was finalized. It was at Christopher's white coat ceremony, the formal event where medical students receive their white coats and officially become doctors. Christopher had asked if I'd be okay with his father being there, and I'd said yes. Because this wasn't about Marcus and me. This was about our son and his achievements. Marcus looked older. Not just the natural aging we'd all been through, but weathered, like life had been harder on him than he'd expected. He was there alone. No date, no new girlfriend, just a middle-aged man watching his son with obvious pride. We nodded at each other across the auditorium, but didn't speak. After the ceremony, at the reception, Christopher made a point of taking a photo with both of us, separately, not together. He was diplomatic, like that. When Marcus finally approached me, I was standing by the refreshments, holding a cup of punch and trying to decide if I should leave early. "Diane," he said softly. I turned. "Marcus." "Christopher looks good." "He does. He's worked very hard." An awkward pause. Then, "You look good, too. Happy." "I am happy," I said, and I meant it. "I'm glad." He seemed like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Finally, "I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know. I go to therapy now. I've been working on understanding why I did what I did, why I threw everything away." "And? What did you learn?" He looked down at his hands. "That I was scared. Scared of getting older, scared of becoming irrelevant, scared of being just another middle-aged man with a mortgage and responsibilities. So I tried to feel young again by doing something reckless, something that made me feel alive. And did it work?" He met my eyes. No, all it did was destroy the one real thing I had. The one person who actually knew me and loved me anyway. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me, a small part I wasn't proud of, felt vindicated, felt like he was finally understanding what he'd lost. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for both of us. Sad for the time we'd wasted. Sad for the love that had been real once, before he'd poisoned it with his choices. I hope you figure it out, I said finally. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I already found it once. I just didn't appreciate it until it was gone. That's the tragedy, isn't it? We don't value things until we lose them. He nodded. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever think about what might have been if I hadn't? He couldn't finish the sentence. I considered the question. Did I think about it? The alternate universe where Marcus had stayed faithful, where we'd grown old together, where our 25th anniversary had been genuine instead of tainted? Sometimes, I admitted, but not as often as I used to. And when I do, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel neutral, like thinking about a book I read once but didn't particularly enjoy. He flinched at that, at being reduced to something so unmemorable. But it was the truth. I should go, he said. But Diane, thank you. For what? For giving me 2 good kids, for 25 years, most of which were happy, and for handling everything with so much grace. You didn't have to be kind. You could have destroyed me, but you didn't. Destroying you wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just destroyed me too. He left after that. I watched him go. This man I'd loved for most of my adult life and felt nothing. Not love, not hate, not even pity anymore. Just a gentle sense of closure. Christopher found me a few minutes later. You okay, Mom? Yeah, I said, hugging him. I really am. Life went on. That's the thing they don't tell you about heartbreak and divorce and betrayal. Life doesn't stop. The world keeps turning. The sun keeps rising. And eventually, impossibly, you keep living. I celebrated my 52nd birthday with Alicia, Christopher, and a small group of friends I'd made in the 2 years since my divorce. We went to a nice restaurant, not Marcello's, I couldn't go there anymore, and they toasted me. To new beginnings, to strength, to the future. Alicia got married that fall. It was a beautiful ceremony in upstate New York, at a vineyard with rolling hills and perfect autumn colors. She asked me to walk her down the aisle, and I did, with pride swelling in my chest so large I thought I might burst. Marcus was there, of course, but he sat on the opposite side from me, and we barely spoke. When Alicia danced with him during the father-daughter dance, I excused myself to the bathroom and cried a little. Not for Marcus, not even for the marriage I'd lost, but for all the moments like this that we'd never share again as a family. When I came back, Carol was waiting for me. You okay? Getting there, I said. You know what the best revenge is? She asked, handing me a glass of champagne. What? Living well, being happy, moving on. That's the thing that'll drive him crazy, knowing you're fine without him. She was right, and I was fine. Not perfect, not healed completely, but fine. I started dating more seriously after Alicia's wedding. Nothing that felt like it would last forever, but pleasant companionship. Dinner with a retired professor who liked to debate philosophy. Coffee with a widower who made me laugh. A few dates with a man who was clearly still in love with his ex-wife and probably shouldn't have been dating at all. And then I met James. He was a carpenter, of all things. 54, divorced 10 years, with 2 grown sons of his own. He'd been hired to build custom bookshelves in my living room and we got to talking while he worked. About books, about life, about second chances. He asked me to dinner after the bookshelves were finished. I almost said no. I'd learned to be cautious, to protect my heart. But something about the way he looked at me, genuine and open and honest, made me say yes. We took it slow. Months of dating before anything serious. Long conversations about our pasts, our failures, our hopes for whatever time we had left. He'd been cheated on, too, by his ex-wife, and we bonded over that shared wound. "Do you trust me?" he asked one evening, maybe 6 months into our relationship. I thought about it honestly. I want to. I'm learning to. "That's enough," he said. "That's all I need." 3 years after I found that ring in Marcus's suit pocket, I'm sitting on my back porch on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. James is inside, making breakfast. "Pancakes," he said, with fresh blueberries from the farmer's market. My life looks nothing like I thought it would 3 years ago. But it's mine. Fully, completely mine, in a way it never was when I was trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect partner, the perfect half of a unit. I'm not bitter anymore. I don't lie awake at night wondering what I could have done differently, what I could have been to make him stay faithful, because I know now that it wasn't about me. It was about him, his fears, his weaknesses, his inability to appreciate what he had. I've learned things in these 3 years, hard things, important things. I've learned that love isn't enough. You also need respect, honesty, commitment. You need someone who doesn't just love you, but chooses you every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I've learned that starting over at 50 isn't the end of the world. It's scary, yes. It's uncertain, but it's also liberating. There's something powerful about building a life based on what you want, not what you think you're supposed to want. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I'm fine. Some days I hear a song on the radio that Marcus and I used to dance to, and I'm right back in that moment of discovery, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet all over again. But those days are fewer now, farther between. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or condoning. It just means releasing the poison so it doesn't destroy you from the inside out. I've forgiven Marcus, not for him, but for me, so I could move forward without dragging all that anger and hurt behind me like chains. And I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I could survive something that felt unsurvivable, that I could rebuild a life from rubble and make it something beautiful. James comes out onto the porch, carrying 2 plates of pancakes. He kisses the top of my head before sitting down beside me. "What are you thinking about?" he asks. "How far I've come," I say. "How different everything is." "Regrets?" I consider the question. Do I regret marrying Marcus? Spending 25 years with him? No, because those years gave me Alicia and Christopher. They gave me experiences and growth and lessons I needed to learn. They made me who I am today. Do I regret staying in that marriage as long as I did? Not letting myself see the signs earlier? Maybe. But I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. We all do. No regrets, I say finally. Just lessons learned. He nods, satisfied with that answer. We eat breakfast in comfortable silence, watching the day unfold before us. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about what I'd tell my younger self. The Diane who stood at the altar at 23, full of hope and dreams, and absolute certainty that love would be enough. I'd tell her to trust her instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't talk yourself out of your intuition just because acknowledging it would be uncomfortable. I'd tell her that it's okay to ask questions, to want transparency, to expect honesty. Partnership isn't supposed to be about blind trust. It's supposed to be about mutual respect that makes trust easy. I'd tell her that she's enough, just as she is, that she doesn't need to be perfect or accommodating or endlessly understanding, that she deserves someone who sees her worth without needing her to prove it constantly. I'd tell her that heartbreak won't kill her. It'll feel like it might, but it won't. She'll survive. She'll rebuild. She'll come out the other side stronger and wiser and more herself than she's ever been. I'd tell her that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. That walking away from something broken takes more courage than staying and pretending it's fine. But mostly, I'd tell her this. You are not defined by someone else's choices. You are not diminished by someone else's inability to see your value. You are complete all on your own, and anyone who gets to be part of your life should feel lucky, not like they're doing you a favor. I wish I could go back and tell her these things, save her from some of the pain, but I can't. All I can do is live the lessons now, share them with others who might need to hear them, and hope that somewhere, someone reads this story and realizes they don't have to accept crumbs when they deserve the whole feast. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for walking with me through the pain and the healing and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding a life. Maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe you found something you weren't supposed to find, or heard something you can't unhear, or suddenly realized that the life you thought you had was built on foundations you never knew were cracked. If that's you, I want you to know you're going to be okay. It won't feel like it at first. It'll feel like the world is ending, like you can't breathe, like you'll never be happy again. You'll cry more than you thought was possible. You'll question everything, your judgment, your worth, your ability to ever trust anyone again. But slowly, gradually, impossibly, you'll heal. You'll have good days where you forget to be sad. Then, you'll feel guilty for forgetting, like you're betraying your own pain. But those good days will become more frequent. The space between the bad days will grow. And one day, I can't tell you when, because it's different for everyone, you'll realize you've gone a whole week without thinking about it, or a whole day feeling genuinely happy, or a whole hour just being present in your life instead of mourning what you lost. That's when you'll know you're going to be okay. My question to you is this. If you found yourself in my situation, would you have handled it the way I did? Would you have confronted immediately or investigated first? Would you have fought for the marriage or walked away like I did? There's no wrong answer. Every situation is unique. Every person's threshold for forgiveness is different. What worked for me might not work for you, and that's okay. The only thing that matters is that you make a choice that honors who you are. Not who you think you should be, not who someone else wants you to be, but who you actually are in your heart of hearts. Be true to yourself, protect your peace, And remember, you deserve a love that doesn't require you to doubt yourself, investigate your partner, or beg for basic honesty. If you've ever experienced betrayal like this, or if you're going through it now, please know you're not alone. Share your story in the comments if you're comfortable. Sometimes, just saying the words out loud helps them lose their power over you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, please share it with them. Sometimes we need to know that someone else survived before we can believe we can too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this journey with me. With love and hope for your healing, Diane.